To Chelsea, the Reading Outlaw, here to talk about kind of a more serious book today. I don't want to let's get serious, guys. Let's have a moment. But it is In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, a North Korean girl's journey to freedom. And I read this way back at the beginning of November, and I have not talked about it because it took a lot out of me reading this book. This is Yeonmi's story told with the help of Marianne Vollers, and she starts the book, and we are in North Korea, and she spends the first section of the book talking about what life is like in North Korea, the dichotomy between what is actually happening in North Korea and what North Koreans are taught to believe about their country. She talks about the cultural indoctrination and essentially cultural brainwashing that every member of North Korea receives. Things like the military is the ultimate power. The Kim family are deities. They are to be revered. They are to be worshipped. America is the cause of all the problems happening in North Korea, but at the same time, there are no problems happening in North Korea. And it's those kind of logical disconnects that Yeonmi starts to realize more and more as she grows up. Yeonmi is frequently left alone in her village with her sister because her mom and dad were running an illegal smuggling operation. It was one of the few ways they could make money, smuggling precious minerals over the border into China. And then her father is caught and sent to a prison camp, and her mother starts looking for ways to remedy that, and kind of through that process, Yeonmi and her sister come into contact with somebody who can help them cross the border. Yeonmi's sister goes first and then goes missing, so Yeonmi and her mother kind of take off after her, or where they believe that she is, across the border into China. So the next section of the book deals with Yeonmi in China, which is where she's become a victim of trafficking, victim of human trafficking and sexual trafficking. And she's, there are attempts made to marry her off several times, but she actually ends up becoming kind of second in command business partner to essentially her pimp, her human trafficker, the man who bought her. And there's some interesting discussion there about the conflicted feelings Yeonmi had towards him as the person who purchased her like chattel, but also this man who is in the moment being kind to her and not being horrible to her and is helping her try and find her sister. And there's not quite as much discussion there as I would have liked, but it is made a note of, and I thought that was incredibly interesting. And so then from China, we move with the books, we move through the book with Yeonmi and her mother, eventually into South Korea. There's some traveling along the way, and a couple of things happen that I don't necessarily want to spoil, although spoil feels like the wrong word. But eventually she ends up in South Korea, and it talks a little bit about how South Koreans don't understand what's going on in North Korea, how no one understands what's going on in North Korea. And the book follows the rest of her attempts to reunite with her sister. This book is heavy, guys. It's hard. It's hard and it's heavy. It's not written that way. It is written very easily to understand. There is a sense of detachment. I read this book with Caitlin from Kitty G and Elena from Elena Reads, and we all kind of commented on the detachment in this book, and we couldn't really tell if that was because it was a book being interpreted from Korean into the English language, and so if maybe because of that there was something kind of lost, or just because so many of these events are so horrible that in order to get through them, Yeonmi would have had to detach herself from them in some way. I think it's a combination of the two, definitely more heavily on the latter portion. I think that in order to survive the way Yeonmi survived, you have to have at least a small sense of detachment. So the book reads almost kind of clinically. That it makes it a little bit harder to kind of understand or sympathize, at least in the beginning when she's in North Korea. Not sympathize, that's the wrong word. Let me see if I can put this the right way. She seems so baffled by it, and it's such a baffling concept to me as an American that it's almost like you're reading fantasy. It's almost like there's this level of disconnect because there's no way it can be real, but it is real, and that's the whole point. And that it just blows my mind that there can be an entire country of people who believe that the leader in charge of that country is descendant from a deity, and that his death will literally cause physics to stop existing and the world will spin off of its axis. And I don't mean that hyperbolically. I mean that the world will actually stop spinning. It's just so crazy to me. So much. That's what I just kept feeling and thinking throughout this whole book is like, this is just so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me that there's a place in this world where things like this happen. Um, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that Yeonmi survives and that Yeonmi makes it out of North Korea and into South Korea. And even there from South Korea kind of goes on to other things. She's done several speeches and presentations and won several awards for young humanitarians in her effort to kind of shine further light on what's going on in North Korea. This is really not only one of the primary books that's come out of North Korea by a former North Korean, kind of explaining exactly what it is that's going on in North Korea and exactly what it's like for the people who live there, because even like journalists aren't allowed. Journalists are taken on state-sponsored tours where they are given the state-sponsored line. And if not, this is probably not my favorite, but one of the most interesting facts I learned from the book. North Korean soldiers are deployed in twos at all times, and whether that's guarding the border or giving a press tour, because should one of the soldiers either try to defect across the border or tell the journalists what's really going on, the other one has direct orders to shoot them, no questions asked. And so it's that kind of culture and that kind of lifestyle that Yeonmi grew up in and Yeonmi is living in. There are so many wonderful passages towards the end of this book about reading and education and what reading and education do for Yeonmi in terms of helping her to realize that what happened to her in North Korea was brainwashing and wasn't accurate, and that there's so much more out there beyond that. There's so many good passages in here that talk about people telling Yeonmi that she can't do something, people misjudging her or underestimating her. Sorry, guys. And she shows them all up. She shows them all, and she becomes a wonderful student, and she works really hard to get the education that she didn't have in North Korea. This book made me angry a lot, not necessarily at the North Korean government or the military, but at the people along the way who were supposed to be helping Yeonmi and who didn't. People who would lie and take economic advantage, missionaries who would lie and take religious advantage, people who, in the process of trying to help Yeonmi, did untold psychological damage that they didn't realize. There are things in this book to be aware of going into it. There is trafficking, there is rape. The relationship between Yeonmi and her mother is incredibly, incredibly heart-wrenching, and for me was one of the more difficult parts of this book to read and to get through this relationship and what these two women are willing to do for each other, because it's not just Yeonmi's mother doing things for Yeonmi, it's vice versa. And so there's a really good, deep relationship there that really touched me, and so that I think that was definitely one of my favorite aspects of reading this book. And I just can't say enough things. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, although it felt odd to give it a rating at all, because how do you rate someone's life? That's another thing that Kitty and Elena and I talked about, is how do you put a star assessment on somebody telling the story of the tragedy of their life? And eventually we all kind of came to the conclusion that we're going to give it 5 stars on Goodreads as a kind of a promotion. Like, the more 5-star reads the book has, the more likely it is to get picked up by the more people. And so the more people are going to read about the kinds of things that Yeonmi has to say, which need to be read about. This is a book that needs to be written. This is one of those, like, be a better human books that will teach you things even if you don't think you have things to learn. I could not recommend it more highly. I'm begging you to pick it up and to read it. Let me know what you think. I really, really enjoyed it, guys, and it was very hard-hitting. I still think about it at least a couple of times a week, and just what she's doing now, what life must be like for her now, and all of those people who, as hard as this is to say, weren't as lucky as Yeonmi, and who aren't as lucky as Yeonmi, and who are still living in North Korea under conditions that don't sound like they've changed much. So those are my thoughts on In Order to Live, A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom by Yeonmi Park with Marianne Vollers. If you've read it, please comment down below to let me know what you thought. If you haven't read it, please pick it up. And as always, guys, you can like, subscribe, and I will see you very, very luckily and very, very blessedly around the internet. Bye.